Hello, everyone, and welcome to this brand new episode of Christine Means Business. And today I am with a wonderful, wonderful woman who I cannot wait to introduce you to. And she is Emma O'Brien from the UK. And we met quite recently, I have to say. We never really crossed our spheres before, but we were in a mastermind together that was organized by Gemma Wendt. And the more I got to know about Emma, the more, I really don't believe in coincidences or in algorithms. The more she popped into my Facebook feed and I saw things she said, and I was like, oh my God, I need to have her on here because she has a really important message and a lot of knowledge that I think a lot of you will benefit from. So officially, Emma O'Brien is a mindset coach and rapid transformational therapist who specializes in helping small business owners break free from imposter experience and self-doubt, and incorporates a unique blend of subconscious belief work, mindset, strengths coaching, and positive psychology with her freedom framework to help her clients achieve transformational results. Now, I'm a huge fan of all of these components. But as I told Emma, and we had just a tad of a chat before we jumped on here, as someone who had been living in the UK for 5 years, who has been, an English teacher for 10 years before, studying English language and literature, I can promise you that Shakespeare doesn't mention imposter syndrome or, mindset in any of his works. And that I didn't even come across these expressions in my regular academic work until I actually started the journey of entrepreneurship. And it's not the first thing you notice. The first thing you usually stumble upon is marketing, branding. I would even argue people know what a webinar is and a funnel is before they actually understand how important the work of mindset and especially imposter syndrome is. So Emma, the first question I would like to ask you is, I'm pretty certain, and this is just me being very assumptive, but that it's not necessarily the first thing that you started out with, but that you realized this is going to be your core. And I just want to ask you how did you, or when, how did this magic happen that you decided, okay, this is so important and I want to make this the core of my business?
Wow, with all good niches, it comes from painful personal experience. So it really, nobody kind of is going to say when they grow up they want to be a rapid transformational therapist, mindset and strengths coach dealing with imposter syndrome. So it really began when I experienced quite debilitating depression. And it was in really unraveling the mess of that and working through that I became more aware of the sort of mindset and self-development work that really we all should understand and know about in order to live healthy lives where we thrive, not just survive. And so that was my, although it was a bit of a painful, messy time, and, a lot of disillusionment about the solutions that were available for people with depression, medication, cognitive behavioral therapy, and so on and so forth. So out of the journey of finding solutions came this obsession really about how do we be more resilient? How can we thrive? How can we, what can we learn about the mind that helps people? And another turn that happened around that was I was in a role that really didn't suit me. I felt desperately uncomfortable, realised that I was, a square peg in a round hole. Mm-hmm. I needed to change tack. And changing tack meant learning about my strengths. Mm-hmm. It meant taking on roles that suited me better, my personality. And through that journey, I started to work on transformational change and coaching, qualified as a coach. It's only when I qualified as a coach and learned some of the traits that are so common presenting problems for people that I learned the label imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And I think that is huge. It is a label. And I have to say, I don't even remember when I really understood what it meant. I think it was during a podcast interview, most likely, me being interviewed or me interviewing someone, that I understood that there is a word for a state that so many of us feel every single day, which is even particularly, I would say I think it's important for everyone to be aware of it, but it might be particularly important for people who rely on their persona to function really well in order to make a living, aka running a business.
Yeah, absolutely. What I realized when I was reading about it was that it was the name for what I'd experienced as just this nagging discomfort that was following me round from role to role, no matter what I was doing. Even though, as I described, I knew the role that the sort of corporate role I'd had, that I'd strive to get to that level, was not the right job for me. And then I started to make better decisions that were more aligned with me and my strengths. It still didn't go away, that discomfort, that feeling like, what do they see in me? What is it that they're seeing that, I don't feel like I match up to their expectations? Every opportunity I was given was great, but can I do it? What is it that they see that I don't, I just don't know whether I can do it or not. And this feeling like I'm going to be found out any moment. But the behaviours that went along with it fascinate me now.
Such as, give us an example when you have that nagging feeling of imposter syndrome. Basically, in a nutshell, telling yourself that you're not good enough, or not even telling it to yourself, but believing it, fundamentally believing that you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. What are some types of behavior that stem from that?
It plays out differently for different people, but I had some classic ones that some of the listeners may recognize. So some of the things that I would do would be to have an ever-changing profile. So I was very good at getting myself into programs, big organizational programs, and then moving on to the next one, and sort of, and my way of doing that would be to highlight the expertise of other people and bring other people up and enhance their reputation, and then I could move on almost before anybody caught up with me. That wasn't the thought process at the time, but that is what I understand it to be now. I know so much more about it. The other thing that I did would be to kind of makes me cringe now, but I share it because it just helps so many people. So I used to play myself down in reviews.
How do you do that?
So in performance reviews, you'd have these ratings, you'd rate yourself, and I would be like, I think that requires focus, or that's a development area.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people understand what you mean. Yeah.
I would point out the things that went wrong. I found it very uncomfortable accepting praise. Like I didn't know what to do with it.
It's like Teflon. It's like, go away. Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. So yeah, and these are all very classic traits, and can be quite painful. Mm-hmm. But like I say, the traits sort of manifest in different ways for different people. So for somebody else, it may appear as really overworking, over preparing, being a perfectionist.
Yeah.
It could be avoiding, procrastinating, or sometimes, just not finishing things.
Yeah.
So there's a variety of ways this feeling that people don't see you as you really are, that core part of it that underpins it all, it sort of manifests in all sorts of different ways. So whilst the label, I think, is helpful for people to go, oh, yes, I see what's going on. And also having, some understanding of what they might be able to do about it. I also think it can be, because it's got a breadth to it, that it sort of suggests that everybody's experience may be the same. And I don't believe that's true.
No. I do think that it is in some shape or form that people experience it, but yes, that it is different for sure. I mean, we all have different stories in our heads. And I think we talked about this actually, and I want to tell this story real quick because you know about it. I posted it in our group that I finally decided to be a little bit more open on my private Facebook profile, which for me was like a huge thing because I still consider that as a little bit different, like the former life, the former Christine kind of safe space. And then I had my Instagram and my business pages where I would go full on in, where I felt more home because it was my new identity in a way. It's not that I'm completely different, but things change. I'm like a completely different person. And there was a random person that I really never am in touch with. And I was, saying exactly what I do, why I'm a little bit different, working very holistically with my clients, strategy, mindset, and everything. And she just said, you're not the only one, and pride comes before the fall. And it was really interesting because I do believe that whereas now I realize that those are triggers, I do believe that things like that is growing up with sayings like these make us resistant to praise, make us not toot our own horn because, how dare you, like, how dare you actually praise yourself? It's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be humble. All of these things are still very much ingrained in us. And it's just, it manifests, as you said, in a lot of different ways. It could really mean also, it could stem from, and I already see it now with my little one who's just starting to read and to write, and if it's not the perfect numbers, if it's perfectly shaped, or coloring within the lines, her how should I say, her motricity, like being her ergonomic kind of micromotricity is not the most elegant, but it doesn't matter, who the hell cares? But for them, it shapes them. So it's really, and it shaped us. And I find it really interesting that it plays into all our different realms, as well as personal as in professional. And that's why I would like to do the link a little bit, because you're now focusing on small business owners. And I would love to know why. You could have just said, I'm going to stay in HR corporate worlds and I'm going to help managers or like workers there, but you decided to focus on small businesses. And I would love to know why. And I would also, because people listening here, obviously, most of them run a small business, why should they care? Like, why should they be interested in this? And maybe even what are 2 or 3 things that they could do?
Yeah. Okay, so why small business owners? Well, my own experience of imposter syndrome and overcoming that was a kind of personal journey. And one, I think, my obsession with learning how the mind works and really wanting to get myself into a vocation that really meant something to me. So that's why I trained in Rapid Transformational Therapy. And I was working with, I really always have had a passion about helping people with their self-belief, their confidence, performing better. I worked with many people about to overcome anxiety and depression. And obviously, leaving my corporate job behind, I was then in the entrepreneurial world as a new business owner myself. And it was at an event where the penny really dropped for me. It was a 3-day event, an amazing event with 100 women in the room. And the coach that was delivering the event, she asked everybody, what are your strengths? And I knew so clearly what mine were, because I've been working with my own strengths. I've been tuning into them, leaning into them, experimenting with them for some time. And the philosophy, the whole strengths philosophy, was something that was very well established for me. And I looked around the room and I realized that business
the discomfort, the cloud of like cringing inside.
Yeah, just like scrabbling, and speaking about it in quite generic terms. And so that really ignited a passion in me to help business owners with their strengths. And then the more I sort of surrounded myself within this sort of business owner community, of course, I could see the patterns playing out with that, what was the most common mindset issue? Self-doubt, feeling like a fake, feeling like you don't belong here, that what you've got to say isn't interesting enough, that, you're not qualified, experienced enough yet, and all of that stuff. And I realized I had all of the tools to help other people with the subconscious transformation using rapid transformational therapy, with the strengths, awareness and coaching and discovery and playing with that I was so passionate about. And also, generally just the experience I've picked up, the coaching that I've done around helping people to really tune into what's going on for them and overcome and create new habits, better habits for themselves. I literally just thought, I've got the framework, which is my freedom framework, to help them really overcome this. And it matters.
Yeah.
It really matters, because our economy needs small business owners. It needs entrepreneurs. And the people, I've never been surrounded by so many people with big missions, important missions and work and talent, the talent that is amongst the community. And that's what really, you can tell, really fires me up. I'm like, whoa, you're so talented. Don't hold yourself back. Let me help you. And so that is really where it all came from. And so the experience, the knowledge, the passion for helping people in this way kind of just got born from that. And that's how I got to where I am now.
I love it. I mean, I have I don't even know how to call her exactly. She is kind of a transformational coach, but she's really also an energy coach. But I have her on a retainer. We have a session every month, tapping into, with kinesiology, looking a little bit at what is coming up. And I have to say, ever since I started working with her, which was nearly 2 years ago, it's crazy how much has changed. So the word transformation, it is like, I can really feel it. It's if you were to look at, if you could do an X-ray of who the person is in terms of being, of essence, and you did it 5 years ago and you'd compare it to me now, there'd be just an inkling left of the same essence. Like the basic core is still the same, I guess, but now it's just much bigger, it's more clear. There's a lot of bullshit that has just gone. So I do love that that it has the word transformation, because that's what happens. And it is really, really important as a business owner, because as you know, unless you're selling products, but even if you're selling products, you still have to have your values, your core, and your passion, and it has to be shown. It has to be defended even sometimes, and you just need to stand up and have your voice heard, and that is really difficult if you have those inner voices in your head. So and it's something that I'm always telling people when they get into business. I know that you want to invest into the sales coach. I know that you want to invest into the webinar software. I know that you want to invest into the CRM with all the bells and whistles, but part of your budget has to be you, like personal development, and you don't even know what you don't know, but I can promise you that your business cannot grow unless you grow first. And I've always seen this happen as a parallel kind of thing, and it's just because you do hold yourself back. It might be that you do have all the bells and whistles software and all kind of tech, but if you are not ready to launch the thing and to show up for it, it can't do the work on its own, right? So it's really important for everyone who's listening and who might not be on that journey yet to really, really consider very seriously finding someone or a network or a group that can help you with that, because it is the key piece in the end to really make you thrive and grow. Now, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it comes back to how our mind works. So if something doesn't fit with the beliefs that you have about yourself and about how the world works, then your mind will do things to stop you from going there. or if you feel any kind of discomfort or attach any kind of pain to where you're going to, even if you consciously want to get there, if getting there means or could mean something else, has to go. Common one might be, if I'm successful, I can't have love. For some people, that is a belief that they're not even aware they're carrying it around. How they experience it is that, when they get success, they end up finishing with a partner, or getting into these loops of patterns of behavior or outcomes that they're not comfortable with. And it's the symptoms. So it's becoming aware of the symptoms that are playing out. Where am I avoiding? Where am I procrastinating? Am I overworking, over preparing, being a perfectionist, putting too much time and energy onto something that doesn't really deserve that kind of energy? So it's being symptom aware, first of all, I think. Where's discomfort, where's resistance showing up for me? And that's the sort of mindset work at a surface level. It's then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. Sometimes, and I think those are things that happen to me now regularly, is that I know my triggers. It doesn't mean that I'm not being triggered. I'm still have my triggers. They're very much alive. But the difference is that now I'm aware of them and I can make my peace with them. I can let them go, or I can just acknowledge them and not let my next reaction be dominated by them. Whereas before, because you weren't even aware that it was a trigger, you would just react to that feeling instead of having the power really to take a step back and just acknowledging for what it is, and then giving it a deep breath, and sending it off into a place of peace or whatever you want to do, whatever your strategy is, right? So, and that is not something that's natural at all. It takes a lot of work, I find, and it sounds so obvious, but I really want people to understand that it's really not normal or natural. It takes work. And so anyone who's aware of their triggers, I would really say, well done. It's a huge thing, so really be proud of that. And it's something worth working on.
Absolutely. And I think it is probably one of the most empowering things to be able to do for yourself, to be able to lift yourself above, to disentangle yourself from the thoughts and feelings that you're experiencing, to almost imagine that you can elevate yourself above your mind and look down on the proliferation of thoughts that are going around and the feelings that are associated with those, to sort of see, well, what's going on here? What are those thoughts and where have they come from? And are they thoughts that are helping me or helping me go where I want to go, or are they working against me? Yeah. And, that's where we become the thinker of our thoughts as opposed to being our thoughts. And I think that's the distinction.
That's a lovely sentence. The think of our thoughts instead of the being of our thoughts. Yeah. That is a t-shirt sentence, to be honest. I do like that a lot. I do really like it a lot, because here's the thing, something that I then not struggled with, but that can come up, right now, you obviously see what you want to see and you're aware of what you crave at that moment, but I see that there's a movement happening, with more people, and this seems so washed out, but speaking their truth, etc., etc. But now you're starting to see a movement, I feel, that sometimes comes throwing things back into your face, saying, well, speaking your truth doesn't mean just being rude, and just saying, well, I believe this, hence it's true. That's not exactly the same thing. And I know that some people are held back, by sometimes standing their ground because they think it's rude or it is selfish, and there is a huge difference, because saying no, setting boundaries doesn't mean that you're an evil person, because you're not hurting anyone on purpose. And I think that's the biggest thing that people still need to remember, that there's a big difference between setting boundaries, between, changing and taking better care of yourself and your, wishes and what your core beliefs are, versus being heinous or being even hurtful towards other. It's not the same thing. So I think that's just worth pointing out, because it might be something that blocks people from actually going there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we have to do this process of shoring ourselves up from the inside, is how I think about it. We're not going to get validation or acceptance even, or the discomfort's not going to go away from anything external to us. So it all has to come from within.
Okay.
And when you go within, it's about looking at your own thoughts. It's about understanding your own feelings, and then understanding who you are. What are your strengths? What makes you unique? Whereas I think, and that's flipping things over from where people are very often as business owners, in the online world especially, where there's a lot of external pull, and conflicting messages.
I agree.
So to get on and be successful, you have to work hard. Oh, business can and should be easy. You know, there's a lot of people there faking it, and so lots of people write posts about people faking it and not living what they're talking about. And there's a lot of like throwing stones of like people aren't acting with integrity and this, that, and the other. And you get people who are very keen to do the right thing, very with this strong desire, who are very self-critical, who don't, no matter how qualified they are or how talented they are, just can't see it, receiving these messages. And it compounds, that feeling of not being good enough. Oh, that's me they're talking about, who isn't walking the talk.
Yes.
That's me. I can't be good enough if I have to still be the one that's working all the hours to make my business work. And it's easy.
Yeah.
Or, perhaps they are the people that find it easy, and they're thinking, well, perhaps then when they find something, a struggle, they think, oh, I must be an imposter then, because now I'm finding something a struggle. I don't deserve to be here. So all of these sort of different scenarios play out, and then you've got the community and cultural aspects around all of this. So, there's a Zoom room with 100 business owners, and everyone feels like an imposter. But no one admits it to each other.
So true, because you have to be strong and be fierce and everything.
Yeah. And there are, people just showing the highlight reel, one's showing the highlight reel and the kind of the client results, the other one's procrastinating, another one's not finishing, somebody else is being a perfectionist, and you've got all of these different behaviors. And everybody actually, and this is what I do quite often, if I'm doing guest slots in groups, one of the first thing I'll do is just say, who feels this way? Literally everyone's hands go up, and it's a great leveler, because this is the work to normalize it.
Okay.
Well, that's part of the work to normalize it. The next part of the work is to change it.
Yeah. So we have just a little bit of time left, and there's one more topic that I just quickly want to talk about, because it's where I see it come up all of the time. Like in the beginning, people are fine. They are okay with finding their niche. We do their brand work. And then the second pillar that I work on is finance. And that's where it comes in. So the approach that I usually take is that we first crunch numbers ice cold, and that's traumatizing enough, because people actually have to go back and look at the receipts and look at bank statements and even look at their bank account, which can sometimes be, kind of traumatizing enough. But it's just very factual, not judging themselves around it. But it's one way of, taking out the judgment and just crunching the numbers and saying, okay, we're going to base our package pricing, first of all, based on the needs, of the very nothing to do with vanity or anything, but just looking at what do you actually need in order to survive, because this is your job. And then we have the huge mindset problem coming in. Very often it is helped a little bit by actually seeing the ice cold numbers and realizing that it's a job, this is just, okay, I need to eat, I need to have bills to pay, this is actually what I need a year or per month. But then we have the discussions about, but am I good enough already? But, all of these things. And it's incredible, I find, like how our mind is so powerful when it comes to, and you already touched on it, on love, on relationships. And the second one that comes up to me for business owners a lot is, that's the second one that I see very often is money. And the third one would being to be visible. So I just want to touch very quickly upon the money piece. And what are some things that you can see through your experience? Because I'm sure you've seen it over and over. And what is maybe one tip that you can leave us with to help us along with this little saboteur, so to say?
In particular around money. I mean, our relation, I think it's the understanding that our relationship with money is emotional.
It is. Like now I can say I love money. I always say I want to have money babies. I'm so much in love with it, and so that's fine. But I can tell you it didn't used to be that way, like for sure.
But the beliefs that you have around money won't be yours, and you will have them from growing up. So many people, probably the most common issue I've dealt with is where people can only ever get, have enough, never more than enough.
Yes.
Because of that sort of, having post-war parents and sort of often the way money was managed and being frivolous was not sort of was frowned upon, etc. So I think it is about taking the time. It's about understanding that is the case, and you can change your beliefs by making something else more familiar. So I think that's my one piece of advice. So this applies to across the board with anything. If something is unfamiliar to you, your mind doesn't like it. Yeah. So if having lots of money is unfamiliar to you, that's why so many lottery winners, once they've had the money, it's just gone within a few years. They've really lost it because it was not familiar to them to have that money. That's not within their makeup. So if you want a different situation, you have to make that more familiar to yourself. So and how you can do that is show it to your mind, because your mind can't tell what's the difference between what's real and imagined. So the more you can imagine yourself and see yourself walking through the life where you have the money that you want. And when you give your mind clear and detailed, specific instructions, it can't help but move you towards it. That's how it works. That's its job. So, when we're intentional with this, and this isn't about manifesting, this is using how your mind works to create an outcome. So, it might be that you catch yourself scrimping, even in really subtle ways, like maybe you're serving up portions and you take the worst one, or you scrimp on time, or you scrimp on, you're in the supermarket. Do I get this one? Do I get the really cheap one? And it's like,
yes.
So if you were to start to become more aware about where your habits are not in line with the vision that you have for yourself, and particularly from a financial perspective, and that gives you clues of things you can start to change and act as if. But also showing yourself. So if having the money that you desire involves putting your prices up, it's always when people put their prices up, they start to go,
nobody will buy. I'm so greedy.
Yeah, and you grow into prices and out of them. And sometimes particularly if you take a big chunk, it feels so unfamiliar that you end up sabotaging your efforts. So, making your pricing feel very familiar to you before you hike it up is a great way of making it familiar and less scary to your mind. So that's just a few tips, and you can do that through visualization, by writing those figures down a lot, by seeing yourself having a conversation with a client and just naturally, easily, effortlessly saying that price at the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
See, these are all the suggestions. This is what I put into people's transformation scripts for
Yes,
them.
no, absolutely. And that's what I want to touch on next, because we're pretty much out of time. But it's, if I know that some people have been listening and they're like, oh my God, I need this. I absolutely need this guidance. I know I have an inkling that there's a lot going on with me and I'm standing in my own way. How, and I totally vouch for you, because I mean, we've experienced working with you in the group, and I'm just, you know, from what you're saying and everything. So how do people reach out to you best to maybe inquire how they could work with you or just figure out what you have on offer?
Sure. Well, there's my website, which is www.mobrien.co.uk, which is EMOBRIEN.co.uk. And I don't know whether you were able to put links with this.
Yes, there will be on the show notes. You will have all the links.
So on the show notes are all the details there to get in touch with me, and you can find out what I do. I do group programs, one-to-one, and I also have a mindset membership. So all sorts of levels of support for people depending on where they're at.
Brilliant. I love it so much. I'm really happy that we managed to touch on so many different points. I just think it's a topic that we need to address regularly, because even, you know, if you work on it regularly, you tend to slip back into patterns. It's just a never-ending kind of work, which is not something negative. It just means that you care and that you want to keep developing, you know. So having said that, I really want to thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with everyone who's listening. And it's been a joy again to be reminded of all those things as well. It just makes me smile, you know. It just makes me like, yeah, that's something familiar, you know. So it's been absolutely wonderful, Emma. I'm so happy that I could have you here today. And hopefully we'll talk again, who knows, soon, hopefully.
Yeah, it's been great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And to all you guys, you will hear the next interview in 2 weeks. So stay tuned. And for anything else, you can head over to my blog on christinemeansbusiness.com, where you can watch, listen, or read what we've been talking about throughout the different weeks. Bye-bye for now.